would happen over there, because people over there are so involved in the political scene. They want to see community impact. Those are things that they might value much more, deeply rooted in their communities. Maybe that's a model that a church might have to adopt to in some way in order to be able to do some form of ministry over there. But the institutional church maybe might so. I don't know. But these are so contextually driven. And obviously these are guides, not it has to be done this way because it works in every circumstance, I should say. So, with that being said, like on an international front, that really depends on where you are going. But it also heavily depends. Like I think this is actually very relevant. I believe it was one of the, I can't specify on the top of my head which Methodist denomination after the split it was, but some of the Methodist denominations in Africa are actually much more conservative on their theological and doctrinal matters, much more than some of the Eastern ones, or not Eastern ones, the Western ones over here in the West, which are much more progressive and liberal in their theological matters. And when the split happened, some of the Methodists, some of the same Methodist camp, were saying that, hey, you need to change your perspective and doctrines on these things. These Western Americans telling these Eastern Africans change their perspective on things, or they're going to stop sending them money. That is
Crazy.
There's a word for that. It's called colonialism. but that's because they're using a conformist model. But weirdly enough, because of that, those churches became largely much more institutional in their African societies. So it's very, like, obviously it depends a lot where it's going, but I think where there is areas, like I think in the 1040 window, what comes to mind, where there is a lot more persecution, and you cannot, like, the question is, like, these are areas where that you can openly be a Christian.
Yeah.
If you cannot openly be a Christian, a lot of these models become so different. Now, I would say that if you are being a very bold and outspoken church, you are going to probably become much more of an institutional model. But if not, and you have to be a hidden church, a secret church, an isolationist, respectively. But it's actually, now that you're thinking about